Okay, we are on. Hello and welcome to Sports Opinion, the weekly sports talk show on Channel 18. That's public access TV. My name's Dirk Keller, and we are here with some very special guests. But before that, I want to introduce Bob Boyd, who's here again today, and as always, Earl Murphy. Earl, it's your show.
Earl the Pearl.
He's always here, and we're glad for it. We're also glad that we have some really unique visitors to Sports Opinion today. First off, we've got Phil Haddy, the longtime Sports Information Director for the Athletic Department at the University of Iowa, and an even longer tenured icon of Hawkeye sports. Bob Brooks is here with us today. Bob, welcome to Sports Opinion.
Well, thank you.
Again.
Yeah.
It's been a few years since Bob was here. Phil, we had you on a couple months ago, I think. Yeah, and it's really good to have all of you here today. I'm going to talk a little bit about Bob Brooks and some of the accomplishments in his long tenure with the Hawkeye sports programs.
Well, don't.
It's going to take a while.
Don't waste a lot of time with that.
We've got an hour.
Let's get down to the subjects.
First off, I want to mention that Bob has been covering Hawkeye sports, and this is not a misprint. Bob Brooks has been covering Hawkeye sports for nearly 75 years. He started as a teenager. He is a 10-time winner of the Iowa Sportscaster of the Year Award and was inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame in South Bend, Indiana. His illustrious career has already been recognized with Hall of Fame inductions by the Iowa Broadcasters Association, the Iowa High School Football Association, and the Iowa Hall of Pride. Also, the Iowa Speed Skating Organization. Did you know that?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Now you got to tell us about that.
We're going to talk about that. But not to be left out, the Cedar Rapids Washington High School Hall of Fame, as well as Cedar Rapids Kennedy High School Hall of Fame, and last but not least, the Cedar Rapids Colonels Baseball Club Hall of Fame. He has received the Chris Schenkel Award from the National College Football Foundation. He has received the Golden Mike Award, Mike being short for microphone. He has a Lifetime Achievement in Broadcasting Award and the Learfield Sports Award for serving 50 years as the voice of the University of Iowa Hawkeyes. We are so honored to have you here. But there's one more little nugget. Kingston Stadium in Cedar Rapids, where we've all been a number of times for really good football games and track meets. Kingston Stadium in Cedar Rapids has a press box named after Bob. Currently, Bob works as the sports director at KMRY AM Radio in Cedar Rapids. Are you ever going to retire?
Yes, I'll be retired someday.
Yeah?
Sooner than later, I imagine.
I don't see it. I don't see it.
How is retirement, Phil?
My retirement is excellent, but I'm not going to recommend it for Bob because he lives on his work and his interviews and something like that. And if he said I'm going to retire, I'm afraid what might happen next. So I think he needs to just keep working, until he takes his last breath.
Well, he clearly needs to
that's a long
accomplish a
time.
few more things. He hasn't done much, right? All those awards, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, you've only gotten 10 you've only gotten 10 Iowa Sportscaster of the Year awards.
Got to go for 11.
Yeah. You've seen an awful lot. You've heard an awful lot. You've told an awful lot of great stories about the Hawkeye athletes over the years. But what I want to talk about first, before I forget, we want to wish Bud Supel, our regular panel member here on Sports Opinion, a very speedy recovery. Bud has got some minor health challenges, and he's just not going to be able to be here today. We want him back soon, and we want to wish you and Carol all the happiness possible during this challenge in your health. So whatever you do, don't call Bud at home after midnight tonight like you usually do. Bud, get well, and we'll see you back here soon on Sports Opinion. When I was doing my research for the show today and what to talk about with Bob Brooks, one of the things that caught my eye that I had never learned was that Bob was one of the first to interview Jackie Robinson when he made his way to the major leagues. And I want to know more about how that interview came about, where it happened, and what Jackie had to say at such a young age.
Well, it was the developing story of the Brooklyn Dodgers signing the first black player in history. And he was making his first trip around the league with the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I knew that they were playing the Cubs at Wrigley, and so I went to the game, and the press had not been allowed to interview Jackie. He would give no personal interviews. That was ordered by the club.
Branch Rickey.
Yes. And the traveling secretary, a man with an interesting name of Harold Parrott, was supposed to keep the press away from Jackie. Well, as you well know, the Dodger players didn't welcome Jackie on the team with open arms. Consequently, he was shunted into the corner of the visitors' dugout at Wrigley Field, and when I got out there for batting practice, why, I noticed that Jackie was down at the end of the bench all by himself. So I went over and sat down next to him, and he was anxious to talk to somebody about something. And he was a well-educated man, and had come from Stanford, and they had researched his character and everything, and so I turned on the recorder, and
Was it a great big one?
oh, big. They said it was portable, but an elephant had a difficult time. But anyway, I started in, and we started the usual interview about his experiences and so on. And he was very articulate and was really telling his story. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw Harold Parrott coming over towards the dugout. And so I cut off the interview and scrambled out of the dugout, and I immediately got out of the playing field area and up, and I went out and mixed in with the crowd so they couldn't find me.
Good move.
And so that's the way it developed.
Who were you working for at that time?
At KCRG in Cedar Rapids.
Radio.
Radio.
And did you get any kind of response when you ran that interview on air?
No.
Nobody
None.
called to say anything negative or positive?
No.
Huh.
That is something of that time. You know, a great deal has been made out of the Jackie Robinson story and in the movie about what was happening with the public, what was the public doing about this. Well, there really was reaction, of course, but nothing that it's grown over a period of time. They took it more or less as, yeah, that's it. We've broken the barrier, and we go on from there. And the Dodgers had themselves a great, great player, and he was respected by the fans for his abilities. And
Did you ever run into Jackie Robinson again?
no,
No. I think history proves that the state of Iowa has always been racially tolerant compared to a lot of other places, especially states that surround us, like Minnesota,
Yeah.
like Missouri, Kansas. I'm not smart enough to know where Nebraska stood on
Well,
racial.
Basically, of course, the story was worthwhile. Hollywood and Major League Baseball has promoted the Jackie Robinson Day, where all the players wear his number, and the Hall of Fame, of course. And but in the main, at that time, it was just a developing situation on the Dodger Ball Club. Pee Wee Reese became his good friend.
Pee Wee Reese, the son of the South,
Yes,
so to speak.
and but now Major League Baseball, we've come full cycle.
Oh, yeah.
Major League Baseball has established a program of diversity with regard to getting more African American players interested in baseball, because other sports have taken over the attention of the Afro-Americans.
Well, there were so many, Bob, for a time after Jackie Robinson, when it became pretty commonplace, and then all of a sudden it was taken over probably by the South American
Yep.
players, and now there's what they consider a genuine shortage
Yeah.
Oh,
of
sure.
Afro-Americans in
they've,
Major League or minor league baseball.
working on the inner city situations to try and develop baseball as an integral part of the.
Yeah, quite frankly, football and basketball have become more
NBA.
attractive.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. St. Louis Cardinals have no black players at all.
And what you said about the state of Iowa certainly has credibility, because I think you have to go. And I say this sarcastically, but that Bob may have been there. But when we played Duke Slater
Oh, yeah.
back then, Duke Slater was one of the. Maybe you
Yeah.
were there to cover that interview.
No,
I don't
no.
think so.
I don't.
I met Duke, but after he was a judge.
But he's one of the first, certainly one of the first black players in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
Back then, and he had it pretty rough. But I think,
He became a good friend of Ozzie Stillings.
yeah, those were players that were felt right at home at the University of Iowa.
Right.
And
Trailblazers.
yeah,
Right.
I think the University of Iowa has always been a good place
Yes.
for diversity, and has a good reputation. For
And not just with minorities, but women too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You look at women's sports, and again, not just the University of Iowa, but the state of Iowa. I've told this story before. I grew up in Illinois and had never heard of girls playing basketball. And
Yeah.
then I come to Iowa to school, and I see girls playing basketball everywhere. It's on TV, and sold out state tournaments, and I just
Six player.
yeah, whatever it was, I didn't understand the 6-player game. I couldn't understand why women weren't allowed to jump or to dribble more than, what was it, 2 times, 3
Yeah.
times. That didn't make any sense, but they played.
You couldn't also on the defense. You played only defense.
Right. Yeah.
You didn't.
Yeah.
You could not move across the midline.
Right. At least they played.
It became a show.
I don't know
and-
if do they play that type anywhere in the
No.
country anymore?
We in
No.
Oklahoma were the last 2 states, and we both got rid of it at about the
Well,
same time, right?
when Title IX came in, that
Right. That was it.
Yeah.
was the end of that sort of basketball.
Yeah.
It had to be equal.
Do you remember your first girls' state basketball tournament?
Yes.
High school? Were you in high school, or even younger than that, maybe?
Well, it was held at the old Drake Fieldhouse in Des Moines
Yeah.
when the girls' state tournament and the boys' state tournament was held there too. The girls' state tournament was a promotion of the Des Moines Register.
And they did a good job.
Yes, they did.
A great marketing idea.
Yep.
So was your first introduction to this, Bob, as far as your interest, obviously has always been there, was it like for a high school newspaper, or how did you initially get involved?
All through my dad, I guess.
Yeah.
My
What was his name?
Ira Brooks.
And you grew up in Cedar Rapids.
Yes.
You graduated from Franklin High School.
Franklin, yes.
And how did your dad influence your interest in sports?
Well, he was on the board of the Cedar Rapids Ball Club,
Baseball.
baseball club.
Yeah.
You know, there's 3 generations of Brookses, Bob's dad, Bob, his
And
son
Rob.
Rob, yeah.
that are members of the board of directors of the Cedar Rapids Baseball Club. So.
We've had a Brooks on the board of the ball club for 75 years.
Oh, wow.
And when your dad was with the club, what was their name? Were they the Bunnies?
Well, no. They were the Cedar Rapids Raiders. You want to hear another baseball screwball story?
Absolutely. I love it.
Sure.
It was during the Depression, and at home, my dad was involved in raising money for the ball club. Now, raising money meant you had to go about day to day to make the payroll, you know. And at that time, Branch Rickey was the
It was with the Cardinals, wasn't
Cardinals.
it? Yeah.
and he developed a system of baseball. And Cedar Rapids was working with the Cardinals
Right.
at that time. He developed a system of, instead of having one AAA team, he had 4. Instead of one AA team, he had 8. What he was doing was trying to get players who, no matter what ability, he'd throw them into the bin and let the cream rise to the top. And he was trying to get the corner on all of the talent in baseball.
He did a good job of
And
it with
was-
the Cardinals.
Well, that's what he was doing.
And they wouldn't give him enough. I read his. I read a biography on Branch Rickey
Yeah.
years ago, and it was old. The book was old. I think he was still alive when it was written, but the Cardinals' ownership wouldn't give him the money and the freedom he needed to expand this idea of minor league baseball, the farm system, and so
Wow.
he left.
Well, no, he didn't leave.
He got quit, didn't he?
What happened was that the commissioner of baseball, Kennesaw Mountain Landis,
That's right.
got the wind of what was going on. This indiscriminate signing of players. And they got no coaching to speak of because there were so many of them.
Right.
And it was just kind of a slave market, really. Well, it was. And
A lot of player managers, probably.
Landis, on a Sunday night, and Cedar Rapids had a St. Louis working agreement. Landis took care of Branch Rickey. He signed an order making every St. Louis Cardinal player a free agent, major league and minor league.
Uh-huh.
And my father wound up, along with the other board members, on Monday morning with the notice that every Cedar Rapids player was a free agent. They didn't have a ball club.
Right.
And then the going up and down the street, knocking on the door for a few bucks here and there
Wow.
to try and keep a few players so they could still have a team.
Wow.
But that took care of the monopoly of baseball talent,
Yep.
and then spawned, of course, what became the draft and all of the stuff that went
Landis,
on after that.
wasn't he a lawyer? Landis?
Yes, he was a judge.
Right, that's right.
I mean, he was, and when he spoke, something
Yes.
happened.
Yes.
Now, back to your dad for a minute. Did he play baseball?
Well, yes, he played sports, was interested in sports, and my mother and father and I, and my aunt and uncle, we were kind of a group that went to all of the Cedar Rapids games at Old Hill Park
Yeah.
in Cedar Rapids.
Where was that located?
Do you know where Roosevelt High School was?
Sure.
Well, there's a big hill out there, and down below the hill, there was the field, the baseball field.
It's not that far from the stadium now, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay.
And
See, Bob's family was also, you guys were pretty good golfers, too, weren't you? Wasn't
Well,
your dad a pretty good golfer, too?
I played first.
Really?
And my father was interested in work, and he was in the construction business. In fact, he worked for the Wisconsin Lumber Company, a company that was owned by the Finkbein family, who
Really?
gave the land to Iowa for the Finkbein golf course.
I'll be darned.
All of this is intertwined, it seems.
It really
that,
is.
Yeah.
It's kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your mother was also a fan of the
Well,
baseball.
she had to be.
Yeah.
And my aunt was, and uncle.
Now, did your mom and dad live long enough to see you start broadcasting Iowa
yes.
games, or to
Yeah.
hear you start broadcasting Iowa?
Oh yes, yeah.
That must have made them very proud.
Well, I don't know. No, if my father was here today, he would say, "Son, you still don't have a job."
A real job.
Even though you're working into your 90s,
Yeah, and have all those
you
awards.
still don't have a job. And how would you respond to your father if he said that to you today?
Well, I would say, Dad, that's probably true, but it sure as heck has been a lot of fun.
It beats working construction.
Or in the lumber
Say, by the way, my
concrete.
wife said, tell Bob hello.
Aw,
Thank you.
Louise, that's sweet.
Yeah, tell her hello.
When I told Louise that you were coming on the show, she was really tickled.
Well.
And same with Bud Supple. He said, "Oh boy, I can't wait to watch that one."
Yeah.
They,
I want to, but while we're talking about Cedar Rapids baseball, somebody that I worked with quite a while, for 15 years when I was in radio at KRNA, was Don Bucky Buckheister.
yeah.
And I've lost track of him. I've asked people that I think would know what's going on with Bucky, how he's doing, and then nobody seems to know.
Well, and I'm another one.
Yeah? Is he still in Cedar Rapids?
No,
Oh, that's why.
he moved out towards the south with family members, I think.
He was a
But-
good guy.
Yep.
And what was the dog's name? Remember that big fluffy white dog he had?
Well, he had several of them.
Yeah. I'd go in to work with Bucky to work on advertising things, and his dog would just come and sit right at my feet. And often in that old office at Old Vet Stadium,
Yeah.
it was cold.
Yeah.
It was cold in there, and the space heater just wasn't getting it done. And then his dog would come and sit on my feet and like, warm me up a little bit. Big furry.
We opened the old ballpark. The lower part of the park, the entrance and everything was gravel.
Really?
We didn't have enough money at the end to pour concrete in there.
I'll be darned.
I mean, we got it done, but it took a while.
Do you remember what year Old Veterans Baseball Park opened?
Well, it opened in 1949.
Uh-huh. Wow. Wow.
You know,
And-
Cedar Rapids people probably don't appreciate the loyalty that Bob has shown the city and
think you're right.
in sports. And I say that being from Cedar Rapids because I happen to know he was in a situation he could have more than one time taken a job as a voice of a Major League Baseball team. And he turned it down to stay in Cedar Rapids.
I didn't know that.
Wow.
Well, my goal was to, I would have liked to have done Major League Baseball for 2 years. And then the travel was,
Yeah.
this Major League system, they're really no better off than the bus league of the Cedar Rapids Colonels because of the scheduling.
Oh, it's crazy.
I mean, they're playing at midnight in Pittsburgh, and the next day they're playing a game in
At noon?
St. Louis at noon.
Yep.
I mean, they're really no better off than getting on a bus and taking a trip for 400 miles someplace, 500 miles.
You're talking about baseball and travel. Vin Scully with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who started with the Brooklyn Dodgers, has been doing play-by-play for that ball club for about as long as you've been covering the Hawkeyes. Not quite.
And he made the trip with the Dodgers to Australia
Really?
when they opened the season. He did the.
He went there?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's not an easy trip.
That's a
I
24 hour.
don't imagine.
that would have been a good one to miss.
But he wasn't going to miss opening day.
Yeah,
I guess not.
Yeah.
I guess not.
I can remember all the people in sports from Cedar Rapids. There's Haddy, there's Brooks, there's Gonder. That's three.
Frosty Mitchell was there for a while
Yeah.
when he owned WMT.
Yeah, Rob Brooks.
He moved that to Grinnell.
And
Yeah, don't forget Rob Brooks.
Yeah.
Rob Brooks. That's right.
John
Yeah.
Campbell didn't do play-by-play, but
Yeah.
That's
by golly,
sports.
he's been there a long time.
yep, we have a group that meets every Monday in Cedar Rapids, and John joins us sometimes when he's not hunting a turkey or catching a fish,
Yeah, yeah.
or doing. He still does
working.
terrific reports.
Yes, he
Yeah,
does.
he's good.
The
And he hauls his own camera,
oh yes, yeah.
and he's retired.
Well, he's
No.
not real. I don't think he is all retired.
It's
is
one
he?
of those deals where he is
Semi.
retired, but he isn't.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
The first day after his retirement, he worked an Iowa basketball game.
Is that right?
I said,
I saw him there. I give him hell for it.
I had walked into the press room and saw John Campbell there, and I said, "Well, John, your retirement didn't last too long."
Now, who's in that Monday group, Bob? With
Yeah.
Oh
you
no,
and John?
no, just a bunch of guys.
Just okay.
Just a bunch of
Yeah.
legendary guys.
Yeah.
no.
Just friends of yours. then.
Cedar Rapids Sports. There,
Yeah.
we have characters, and we
Sure.
have professional people. And,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a big group. Just
Do you ever take that big tape recorder and maybe turn on the mic and
no.
No?
They.
not even tempted?
We have monologues with our group.
Okay.
We don't have conversations they had.
You know, in doing my research, one of the things I didn't realize is that you were the first sports director at KCRG TV.
Yeah.
And
And the first one at radio, too.
really? So you were at the radio station when they started the TV station. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you at KCRG
Yes.
Radio?
Yeah. I was on the sign-on broadcast.
Wow.
So
Wow. And you worked there for how many years at TV? I'm sorry.
28,
28 years.
Would that have been what, the early 50s?
1950.
50s.
Yeah, I think the bio I saw said you started in 1950 as sports director for the TV side.
Yeah. We.
That's just something. And then John Campbell came on board, right?
Oh no.
No?
There were a few in between.
There was 12
Oh, my.
in between John and I.
Goodness.
When you left KCRG, is that when you went to K-Hawk?
Yes.
Okay. And
I've touched them all in
K-
Cedar Rapids.
K-Hawk carried the Hawkeye games, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Bob,
We that is where Learfield started.
That's right.
I,
And it really didn't matter what station he went to, because it was Bob Brooks that we were going to keep on, because I was in the SID office then.
Yeah.
We were going to keep Bob Brooks doing Iowa games regardless of what station he went to, and it happened to be K-Hawk.
Yeah.
So that became one of Iowa's major carriers of Iowa athletics. And you know, a funny story about Bob, and I'm sure he remembers this. This was in the 70s, early 70s, I think, when the Final Four wasn't exactly the Final Four that we know today. Bob Brooks used to do, on KCRG, he used to go to the Final Four and do the broadcasts.
all you had to do was pay.
All you had to do was pay the rights fee.
the rights fee.
Yeah.
And so he was courtside there. Well, the game ends, and UCLA has won another title. Well, I think it was
Down
I
in
don't know.
Houston.
Yeah, NBC or somebody. I forget which network was doing the Final Four at that time. Well, they're going out to center court. They're going to do an interview with John Wooden. Then all of a sudden, this guy from behind the bench comes out with his microphone, just grabs John Wooden and starts asking him questions. And we're looking at that on TV, and that looks like Bob Brooks.
I know that guy.
And Bob's doing the first interview with John Wooden after he wins the national title, when the national network is waiting for him to get done.
Just a minute.
We'll be right with you.
And you know what? Nothing has changed now. The man has such charisma, authority, and whatever word you want to use, they're not going to interrupt him.
No. And I've been in that post-game news conference enough times to know that this is the first guy that gets to ask a question. And I know that Kirk Ferentz, when he holds his media conferences, you're the
I
first
don't
guy he goes
know.
to.
Well, it's one. He's kind of the Helen Thomas that used to be with the.
Not
Yeah,
exactly.
remember Helen Thomas? The Dottie Ray of Hawkeye Sports. Well, I think it's not an overstatement to say that Bob Brooks is the dean of Hawkeye sportscasters.
Oh, yeah.
How can you argue that?
You know, there's been such a wonderful group that I don't disagree with you. He's been a part of, when you have, like, through the years, the Tate Cumminses, the Gene Clausen, you know, all of them, God rest their soul. I watched a movie the other night with Al Grady, in which he was, not a movie, but just a film. He was in it.
yes.
And in which he was attending someone's 50th anniversary party, and Cedric and Pat Altmeyer, who were my in-laws,
Yeah.
he was there, and it was so good to see him on film. You know,
bet.
Al Grady, but
Yeah.
people like this that
This
you
was
know
Al's
that we're-
show, you know.
Yeah, that we're
Yes,
losing. You know, and Bob is certainly you know, one of those people like that. You don't realize how big and how loved and how important they are. And in many cases, it's sad until they're gone.
Yeah. Well, we know, I think I can speak for everybody in this room and everybody watching on TV, that it's a real privilege to have you still covering Hawkeye sports. When we hear that familiar voice, whether it's on TV, whether it's on the radio, we know who it is, and we know to trust whatever you're going to ask, we'll get an answer, because you have the respect not just of the fans, but the coaches and the players too.
Well, I don't try to embarrass them.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
makes a difference, doesn't it?
Well, sometimes,
Yeah.
but sometimes you miss out too.
How about interesting? What are some of your more interesting interviews, Bob, over the years with, let's say, coaches or players?
Oh,
Do you have some that stick out?
How about Ralph Miller?
yeah.
Bob was a good friend of Ralph Miller's.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he's really a sharp guy. out
Great
there.
coach.
Yeah.
Really sharp. I used to eat with him, with Bump and, was Bump there?
Well, yeah.
I think he,
Ralph left when? 72?
A bump came in 70.
Ralph Miller left
didn't he?
in following the 1970 season.
Right after that. Okay.
Yeah.
And went to Oregon State.
State.
Right.
That's when Dick Schultz took over.
And was the winners.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story about
that's what I want to hear.
Ralph when he was out at Oregon State, Iowa. George Raveling was the Iowa coach, and we had Iowa scheduled a game in Corvallis with Oregon State, and so boy, it was going to be a good reunion to go see Ralph, of course, and we stayed. Raveling didn't want to stay in Corvallis, and because it's kind of like West Lafayette,
Yeah.
Indiana, and so we stayed in Portland, and we didn't know whether Raveling was going to get the team on the bus in time to get to the game because he was shopping.
Oh,
And he was an inveterate shopper, but we got up to Corvallis, and the broadcasters, Jim Zabel was there, of course, and
Ron
Ron,
Gonder.
yeah, and
Probably Gene Clausen, was he?
and Gene, yes,
yeah.
and I drove them up there. I trailed the bus with a rental car.
Oh, really?
And so I had the four broadcasters on the game in the car. And we went up there, and we were all concerned that we weren't going to have enough time to get our gear together and get the broadcast hooked up,
Yeah.
get the pregame on, but we did. And the four of us, immediately after the game, and Oregon State won it, went to Ralph's office to see him because of all this time constraints, why we didn't have time to go to see him before the game. And I think it was Jim. He said, "Well, Ralph, what do you like most about Oregon State and Corvallis?" And Ralph turned around and thought for a second, and he said, "I'm only 5 minutes from a Scotch and water."
I heard that he lived while coaching here in Iowa City in the neighborhood I live in now, in Manville Heights, and that he would often sit in his driveway with his Scotch and water and his non-filtered cigarettes. He'd sit out there on a lawn chair and talk to the kids and just
Oh,
old
yeah.
court right there in the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, his son, Ralph Jr., worked with Bob and I at KCRG.
Really?
And that's another thing. Bob was very instrumental in me getting my first job at KCRG, the first in the business, and he was also, he may not like to take credit for it, probably very instrumental in helping me get my job in the SID department. But Ralph Miller's son, worked with us as a cameraman
I
at
didn't know that.
KCRG in Cedar Rapids, and he was a nice kid.
What
Yeah.
do you know what he ended up doing with his career?
Well, I don't know if he continued to be a cameraman or what, Bob. I don't know if you know.
I don't either.
Did he go out? Do you think he
I
went
mean,
out with his
He
dad?
went out to California.
Probably, but he didn't. I mean, I hope he's still around, but I don't even know that for sure.
I'll be darned. You've been everywhere, as the song goes. I've been everywhere, man. Is there any place you haven't been that you'd still like to see?
Oh, yeah. My bucket list was never completely filled. I've never been to I've been through Churchill Downs and done some stories in Kentucky about the horse business, but I've never been to the Kentucky Derby.
He
You should have got closer to George Forstner, huh?
He was
Yeah.
trying.
From
I
Amana?
should have. There were times when I thought he was going to offer a ticket, but
He took Hayden Fry every year, George Forstner,
Oh, did he?
to sit in a private box at
I didn't
Churchill
know that.
Downs.
Yes.
Yeah.
George is quite a character.
no,
I worked at Amana for a year out of college, and
my
he
son
lived right across the street.
My son worked for Amana for
Yeah?
a time.
Rob did? Mm-hmm.
Under Lou King, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I worked there with Lou. Back when they had the Amana VIP golf tournament, all the big stars.
George used to tell me when he talked about tickets for the Kentucky Derby, he said, I'll tell you one thing, there isn't anybody that's got a better seat than I do.
He was, I think, right on the finish line
Right?
with a private booth, and he always had Hayden Fry.
I never knew that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll be darned. Earl, you were going to say something about the Kentucky Derby or George Forstner in the VIP golf tournament, maybe?
I got that changed.
Oh,
You
did
got
you?
that
Oh,
open-
yeah.
open
We've
to
heard,
the
yeah,
public.
you got it open to the public.
Yes.
Yeah, that first year it was private.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It started out with a fight between me and Jack Moyers in Brimmer's. And he said, we were talking about, they put a fence up all the way around
Right.
the JCs. And I said, why are they putting the fence around? He said, keep everybody out. And I said, what's everybody? He said, everybody. And I said, you can't do that. And he said, by God, we are. And he was the head of the
Board and control.
control of athletics.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked for a while. And I walked up. I said, I see you. He said, where are you going? I said, I'm going upstairs to see Tucker. He was the county attorney. And anyhow, he listened and he said, I'll see you. And I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going over to the law library. And he got this, and research this a little bit. And he came back and he said, I'm going to take your case. And he talked to Evie. Evie was a
Was he athletic director then?
athletic director. And they went back and forth. And I made about 2 telephone calls over at that athletic department. And he called Sunday afternoon, and he said, you win. And I said, thank you. He said, are you going to be there? I said, no, but my boys are. Don Knotts was going to be there.
Barney Fife.
Barney Fife. And they, I said, how much are you going to charge? He said, $1. And I said, boy, that's pretty good. That between 4 o'clock Sunday afternoon, and
They always had it on a Monday.
Monday,
These golfers would come off their tour
yeah,
and come in Sunday night.
they sold 5,000 tickets. That was pretty good. And then when Arnold Palmer showed up out there, they sold 35,000
Yeah.
tickets.
Indeed.
When I worked for a man, I think the ticket price was $10 or $12, and
I think it's about 10.
well, they made a lot of money.
I think the only one they really wanted and never got was Jack Nicklaus.
And didn't he have a relationship with Maytag?
I don't know.
If I remember right.
Well, George always said that he played a lot of bridge with Nicholas down in Florida.
Oh yeah.
And George Forstner paid these pros $750 appearance money, and no more and no less. But he also gave them refrigerators and freezers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Radar
This and that.
range.
And
And
Buick's car one year.
Yeah. They had.
but Nicholas told him across the bridge table, he said, George, I don't take my clubs out of the bag for $750.
Well, and Lou King is the one who got golfers
Oh.
started with the logos and hats.
Well, Lou got the celebrities, and he was really terrific.
He was a
with it.
great guy. Now, tell me, is he still living in the Cedar Rapids
Yeah.
area?
Well, he has a home down in Amana.
Yeah, still does.
And
I'll
a
be darned.
home out on Beaver Avenue in Cedar Rapids.
Another great guy.
Yep.
Former Hawkeye
And-
quarterback.
And I stopped playing golf a few years ago, and I left the clubs in the basement, and I kept thinking, well, maybe I'll try it one more time. And I did try it one more time, and I told Lou King next time I saw him, I said, Lou, I gave my clubs to the veterans program that he's
Yeah.
mentored and done
I
such
think-
a magnificent job with
Regarding
the help of Riverside. And
the cap was Lou Boros.
Julius Burrows was the
Okay.
first.
Yeah, and Bob Golby was one.
He was another
Bob
one.
Colby was one.
There were a few. In fact, they showed some old film of the first tournament players championship when that was on last weekend.
Oh, really?
They showed film of the first one, which was in the early '70s, and some of the players were still wearing the Amana hat.
Well, the idea was, of course, there was no insurance for the players, no medical
Oh, really?
insurance. If you had medical insurance, you had to buy it yourself. Well, with this hat deal, if you signed up with the hat deal, you signed up with Amana, you came under their insurance umbrella,
Boy.
and that's the way you got your
He
insurance.
paid all their health insurance. and
I
so-
never knew that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. You're right. They were all Amana employees if they signed up for the hat program.
Yep.
But they had to wear that hat at
Oh, yeah.
every
Tour.
tournament
Yeah.
that you
And
played
it
in.
took about, I'd say, 2 years, but then all of a sudden, advertising started showing up
Yep.
and people
Yes.
realized how, because people at first started saying, what the heck what are these hats, with the different colors and the
Yeah.
stripe and that. And then they're realizing what a benefit it was
Yeah.
to the Amana Corporation. And the fact that everybody started getting into it then kind of took the thunder away from Amana, but boy, oh boy, that was the 1 or 2 days a year. That was pretty special in Iowa City. You got some pretty, high, profile celebrities and golfers in
Well, they
Iowa
had
City.
the President of the United States there.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah.
They had Mickey Mantle and Billy Martin, Whitey Ford.
Martin
Yeah.
got hired back as manager of
Manager there on the golf course.
That's
On the golf
right.
course.
That's right.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. And he was gone.
The one story on Lee Trevino was
yeah.
he came to the Mana tournament,
Yeah.
and after he had won major championships, I know George told me this story one time. That, Trevino came to him and said, "Well, I know you have a blind draw on this thing," but he said, I've got a problem I've got to take care of down in Missouri. And I've got to be there at a certain time, like at 2 in the afternoon. And I think it had something to do with a divorce or something like that.
It sounded like a lady was involved. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
George said, "Well," he said, we'll put you in the first group out in the morning." And of course, they have entertainment that goes on into the night.
Late night.
Trevino might have had an hour or two sleep, and he went out. They were the dew sweepers of the
Yeah,
morning
yeah.
for the Amana tournament,
8 a.m. tee off.
and he tied the Finkbein course record. Had never seen the place before.
Wow.
And Amana had their plane there for him to fly him down to take care of his business of the day, and then fly him back for the evening.
Because they had a fine entertainment event after the tournament, the one-day tournament. We just got about 5 minutes left. I want to get back to the Hawkeyes for a little bit. Tell us your favorite memory of Kinnick Stadium, if you could just pick out one shining moment at Kinnick that stands out to you after all these years.
Well,
It could have been when you were a kid.
oh yes, it was. It would have been, because I saw all of the Ironman games of 1939, and I saw them from the knothole section, but the knothole section, Iowa, that's another. My dad, I'll go back to his story. At that time, this was still in the Depression of 1939.
Yeah.
And Iowa's team was not rated, highly at the start of
They had
the
a
year.
losing record the year before, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, the year before and before,
Yeah.
it was a downtime. But the interesting story was that my dad bought a bond they sold bonds for the stadium. My dad bought one, and he said, "Son, if you ever get a house and you have a broken window, just put this paper up there over it, because that's just what that bond is worth." Well, after the 1939 season, the bonds were paid off. I joined the Knothole Club, and it cost 25 cents to join for the year.
Oh,
Gee.
And
I had one.
Iowa played Indiana as their first Big Ten game of 39, and the Ironman story had not
right.
come aboard, and we just hopped in, knot holders just went into the west side stands, and when the ball went to the north end of the field, why, we went,
Yep.
Just
Saturday.
followed it down there.
just followed it down. And the score was 32-29. And if Iowa hadn't won that game, there never would have been an Ironman star.
Yeah.
Did you ever meet Niall Kinnick?
Yes, I did. I met him through Craven and Bill Shuttleworth. Craven Shuttleworth was a great player at Iowa in the 1920s. And I went to school with Bill Shuttleworth, who was an eminent lawyer in Cedar Rapids.
Mr.
And,
Franklin.
Your alma mater.
Yes, he was. He and I were in the same class, and I met Niall through that connection.
I saw, naturally I saw him, but I saw him punt. He and Cridio punting.
In practice?
Yes.
For quarters.
What?
Is that right? They punt for quarters? Mm-hmm. That was a lot of money.
You know, I didn't know ever catch that, but he every time Kenny owed him a quarter, why he'd go like raise his hand. Oh.
Where did you meet Niall?
I met him at Kennick Stadium once, and at the Cedar Rapids Country Club another time.
Really? I'm
They used
going to guess
practice
he was
right
a
east of that.
He was a
the
guest.
old practice field.
Yeah.
A perfect gentleman.
Oh yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's switch gears, and we've got about 3 minutes left. The old Iowa Fieldhouse. Favorite memory from the Fieldhouse days?
Well, a lot of it has to do with Murray Ware. The players of that era.
Would you consider Murray the greatest Hawkeye basketball player?
Well, he's one of them. He's one of them. He helped make Iowa basketball a tradition.
Yeah.
And so did Dave Danner, who played here at City High.
Still not in the University of Iowa Hall of Fame.
Is that right?
I don't know why, but he isn't.
I know why.
Okay.
Well,
Do we have time, Joe? Probably not. Yeah, we've got.
That's for next week.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
you've just given an hors d'oeuvre.
There you go. There you go.
Okay.
Well, we've been visiting with legendary Hawkeye sports broadcaster Bob Brooks today, and it's just been a pleasure. Phil Haddy, the longtime sports information director at the University of Iowa, has also been here, and we really appreciate it. I can't believe how fast this show has gone. We want to bring you back and just talk Hawkeye sports for one program. I love hearing all the other stories, and I think our viewers will too, but we're going to have to sign off for now. On behalf of Bob Boyd and Earl Murphy and Joe Murphy behind the camera, we want to thank you for watching Sports Opinion every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. on Channel 18, and we rerun the program on Sunday nights at 6 p.m. on Channel 18. You can always catch it on my Facebook page, or you can go to PATV.TV, and they've got all of our programs logged in there. On behalf of all these guys, thanks again, Bob. Thanks again, Phil. And remember this, either you're a Hawk or you're not. Bob Brooks is a Hawk. I'm a Hawk. So are you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.
Amen.